Welcome back to How to Be a Better DM, the official podcast of Monsters.rent. I'm Justin Lewis.
And I'm Tanner Wayland.
And we are here to help you tell better stories for yourself and your players as you dungeon master sessions of D&D, Dungeons & Dragons. We'd like to give you some quick announcements. We actually have one before the show, and then after the show, if you want to stick around, we have some more announcements then as well. But first, let's talk about this. Tired of being alone? Are you tired of not having any of your players understand you? Are you tired of never truly belonging? Well, you're in luck. All you need to do is join the Guild. The Guild is a unique and exclusive experience that is only open to Dungeon Masters. It is a full community focused on helping ease your DMing burdens. Want to meet other DMs? Join the Guild. Want to discuss your homebrew ideas with people who would appreciate it instead of just telling your cat? Join the Guild. Want to find a place where all your wildest dreams will come true? Join the Guild. Go to monsters.rent/guild and sign up today for free. Wait, that can't be right. Chuck, can you check this again? Is this supposed to be... What? Oh, they're serious? It's free? Oh, okay. All right. Yes, go to monsters.rent/guild and sign up today for free, even though they are crazy for giving this away for free. Common side effects may include burping, sneezing, laughing, breathing, hearing, listening, tasting, farting, critting, sarcasm, and in extreme cases, explosive diarrhea. Awesome. With that out of the way, we can get into today's show.
The town square was quiet. The moon shone down on 4 figures, walking slowly. The quiet broke as voices slowly rose from a lighted door at the far end of the square. "Nook and Knife Inn," read the sign above the door. The door swung shut as a man stumbled out with his friend, laughing and mumbling while they made their way across the square. Watching the two stumble, the leader of the group, Lundar, led the way to the inn. Pushing the door open, it was only slightly livelier than the square. In the corner, a halfling snoozed over his ale as a tired waitress tried to shake him awake. A ragged boy stoked the fire in the corner, and the barkeep wiped down the counter as he glanced towards the 4 strangers. "If you're looking for food, afraid we're all spent," he calls out as he glances at them. Lundar strode up to the bar, heaving himself onto the stool before patting his beard back into place. "Oh, we can do fine without food. All we're looking for is a drink, a bed, and maybe some info. Interested?" he asked as he passed a silver piece to the barkeep. A quick swipe later, and they all had drinks. "Now, what kind of info are you looking for?" asked the man. Hello, this is How to Be a Better DM. Thanks for listening to today's show. My name is Tanner Wayland, and I'm very excited to be here and talk with you about how you and I can work to be better DMs. We really appreciate all the support that you guys have given us. We really look forward to hanging out with you next month for a one-shot. Just a reminder, we're doing those quarterly. We actually do have some plans for maybe doing a special one in October. We'll see. We'll keep you updated on that. But regardless, look forward to that. If you'd like to get on the list for one-shots afterwards, I'm going to have a link in the description. All you need to do is sign up for our newsletter, and then from there you can sign up pretty quickly. And then in regards to the newsletter, we're just about to send it out for this month. It's going to have, some thoughts about how we're doing, as well as, some suggestions, some DM tips, some homebrew content for you to look into. So definitely sign up for that if you're interested. We try and keep it simple so that you can, don't feel burdened by reading our newsletter. But regardless, we always love interacting with you guys and getting feedback. If you ever want to reach out, we'll also have our email And of course, we'll have our website link there as well so that you can reach out however you feel like. So just as I get into the content, I want to kind of pose a question to you. After all the time that you spend making stories and writing content for your players, does it ever irk you that they kind of get the information and just move on, even though it took you hours and a lot of creativity to come up with it? I'm going to guess that it probably does. It does irk you, it does annoy you that that happens. And that is why I would argue you should be using more handouts. That's right. Today's podcast episode is about handouts and their purpose for a DM and for the players. So, first off, I guess that kind of leads right into the first question. What are handouts? Typically, when we talk about it, handouts are physical copies, typically papers that players are going to be, DMs are going to be giving players, and it's going to contain information. Sometimes that's written, sometimes it's, maybe it's a puzzle or a map or whatever it is. It's just a handout that they can hold on to, they can physically read and study and get information that way. Now, why do you want to do this? So, first off, as I was mentioning before, you spend a lot of time creating these stories. And so with that being said, what would be more possibly annoying than just not having the story, the lore, the character development that you've worked on just get kind of assumed that like, hey, you didn't put that much effort into it. And so handouts counterbalance this by being like, hey, I put the time into actually like putting it down on a sheet. A lot of times DMs will actually like decorate the sheet or like, char the edges like you used to do when you were a kid and you're trying to make a pirate map or something. They just little things that create an ambiance and really draw the characters in. And it really emphasizes certain pieces of info. So aside from emphasizing that and creating engagement, you're also going to give something that the players can turn back to later, remember earlier sessions, and then also study further. And so I think the handouts are just wonderful because there's so many ways you can use them. I think that one way that a lot of DMs are used to using them is kind of like as an info dump. And that's certainly useful, right? Especially if it's a lot of info and it's the kind of info that the players are going to need to review again, right? It could be the backstory of a major villain or, the king has given them an order and there's a lot of different parts and you don't want to have to go over it every time. And they're not going to take enough notes, right? Players often don't, and that's okay. Because that's why a perfect opportunity to make a handout, have it all be fancy, even maybe tie it with a ribbon and a little wax seal. And then, it's from the king and it's got, 4 bullet points for what they need to do. And it's got flowery language and they're going to get really drawn in and they're going to turn back to that in future sessions. Now, that info dump kind of way, or that exposition, sorry, I don't want to say info dump because I feel like that's putting it down a little bit. But the expository handouts are certainly important. And you're going to have a lot of those, like journal entries, torn up, crumpled notes that they find in the hands of a victim, or perhaps even, just something that they found at the bottom of a well, like stuck into the side of it. I think that wherever someone's supposed to find handouts, they can, I think that you can really do a lot to dress up the handouts. If they found it in a bar, maybe just color a little, maybe just spill a little bit of your soda onto the handout and kind of imitate, or just a little bit of beer, and then let it dry, and then perfect. You've got something that looks like it was just picked up from a bar, just like not too long ago. But I also want to break out of this idea that handouts are only expository, because they can certainly create ambiance. Now, personally, I am a fan of occasionally using horror in my sessions, not for the entire thing, but just certain sections. Now, imagine if you're inside of a castle that a mad duke has been in, and your players are in the duke's bedroom, and they've fought for a while. Some of the duke's his corrupted soldiers, and they finally got into this bedroom, and they find a journal, and you, of course, have a handout that's just a page. Now, I think a lot of players are a little self-conscious about their handwriting, but in this kind of scenario that I'm imagining, having bad handwriting might actually be great, because you could just, using a pen or whatever else you have, if you happen to have calligraphy pens, that's like obviously great, but you can certainly make markers or whatever else work for you. But if the Mad Duke's scribblings and rants are all over the page, it doesn't even have to give much info. All it's really showing is like, oh my goodness, this is terrifying. This Duke is terrifying. We should be terrified. And it also is just the perfect thing for you to really bring across how mad and terrifying and crazy this Duke is. And so I think that there's many ways you can use that for ambiance without having to feel like you've got to really get a point across. Instead, you're trying to get a feeling across. Now, I think that there's many other ways to use it that are quite creative. I was looking it up in preparation for this podcast, and many people enjoy using it to kind of encourage players to study ahead for specific quests. Like, let's say, for example, I saw this on D&D Beyond. It had an article on this, and the DM in this case, the players were going and they were trying to find some carrion crawlers in order to get some pride silk. Actually, they were trying to create pride silk using the silk of the carrion crawlers. And so with that being said, I think a lot of DMs would just be like, okay, give me a roll. And then they just kind of off the cuff tell the players what they think would be useful. Now that's okay. And I'm not saying it's bad, especially if it's on the fly. But if you have time, and if you know for a fact that the players are going to be doing this quest for the carrion crawlers, or for the silver furred wolf, or whatever it is, if you know that they're going to be going somewhere specific, tracking someone or something, then having the players do the research in town, giving them a sheet, and then essentially being like, hey, I'm not just going to give you more info, you got to do your studying, then that will actually draw the characters in so much more. And so I'm just going to say right now, I think any opportunity that you can give the players a chance to really study instead of just doing a knowledge roll, then I think that that's where you're going to get a lot of mileage out of your handouts. Now, like I said before, don't kill yourself on handouts if it's just, a small little question that they have. But a lot of times it's not. A lot of times, if it's like the central part of a quest, then you're going to want to actually emphasize that with a handout. In the inn, Lundar looked around, noting that the halfling was awake, and the waitress was tidying the tables nearby. He motioned the barkeep, who had introduced himself as Hamish, close to him before whispering, "I was told to seek the call of the Wanderer." The fire seemed to flicker brighter as Hamish stared into Lundar's eyes. He sighed and went into the back room before returning and reaching out to shake Lundar's hand. As he did so, he spoke loud and said, "But of course I can get you a room, follow me." As they finished shaking hands, Lundar felt his hands grasp a crumpled piece of paper from Hamish. As the four travelers followed Hamish up the stairs, Lundar could not help but look at the crumpled note that the man had just passed him. It was stained with some liquid, and the writing was difficult to read, as if it had been written quickly. As they entered the room, Hamish whispered to them before closing the door, "All the info should be in that there note. I don't have nothing more to give you." He closed the door, and they were left alone. Lundar walked to the short table by the window, where he tried to smooth the note before reading the words, "Jordell the Wanderer's Plea." He breathed in quickly. Jordell had been here. As he proceeded to read the rest of the note, he knew that their time in this town would not be short. Okay, so to continue our talk about handouts, how do you make them? If you're going to use them in a variety of ways, as if a handout had just come out of a book, or is just a shred of paper that they found on the side of a road or something, or maybe is almost something written on the back of animal, like animal hide. Whatever it is, you're probably thinking, oh my goodness, this sounds like a drag. or at the very least, it sounds like a pain, right? And so with that being said, I just want to encourage you that you can use so many different materials for handouts, right? We're really lucky in the way that, many of us do have a craft store somewhat nearby, right? We have at least a few here in Utah that is pretty close, right? But even if you don't, there's a few other ways to make it happen. For example, I know that there's you can download a few graphic backgrounds that you can actually place on a paper, so they'll actually get like printed along with the words that you type on it. That's certainly an option. Another option is just good old-fashioned getting some, more rough, maybe cardstock paper, so they can go through a little bit more abuse, or at least, some construction paper, and then just, doing stuff to it. Bake it in the oven for a little bit on a low temperature. Maybe even, spill a little bit of liquid on it. I know a lot of times this is kind of a random thing, but I remember that I once, when I was trying to make a paper look old, I mixed some, just a little bit of, I forget if it was just like coffee grounds or like actually a little bit of cocoa, whatever it is. I just did like barely anything. I put it on a piece of paper and then I baked it, and it really brought out that kind of brown quality. Of course, I also crumpled it as well, so that it had that weathered kind of feel to it. There's a lot of different options, and sometimes it's okay to make a paper look nicer, right? And even there's some wonderful fonts, because I think I was talking about handwriting before and people being worried about it. I'm in that boat. Obviously, I think my handwriting's pretty rough, but if I'm really focusing, I can feign a certain kind of more, fantastical writing. Sure. I think if you're trying to do something that's a little bit more, more of a handwritten note, I think you can get away with, writing it yourself to some extent, and just maybe using a different marker, or just practicing a specific form of writing. On the other hand, there are some wonderful, in Word, there's a lot of different kinds of fonts that work super well for what you're going to want, right? There's Broken Script, OT Bold, there's Avalon Regular, there's even some more goofy ones. Frankly speaking, those fonts that look like almost symbols, right? Who's to say that you don't use those and then have the players have to decipher a puzzle from them, right? You have a lot of options there, and whatever it is, just find out what is in your comfort zone. Do that first, and I think you'll find with time that you can do a lot more and get a lot more creative. But once again, you'll only be willing to do this if you think of worthwhile handouts that will really get your players involved. So, be creative first off with like what you want to be in a handout, and then you'll get the motivation necessary to make it look sick, right? To make it look authentic. And so I guess just in ending here, I would just like to say that that you should definitely find an opportunity to use handouts, right? Just something tactile that the players can use aside from dice, aside from minis, and that they can read. In doing so, I think you'll make your adventure a lot more real, but then it's also going to mean a lot more to your players as they have essentially their own little library of memories that they've been able to create with you. And so, on that note, I think that you have a lot of handouts to write and a lot of wonderful adventures to play. And so, I encourage you to roll initiative.
Thank you for listening to today's show. We really appreciate your support and your patronage. We have a few more announcements to go over. First,
did you ever fall in love with the library as a kid? It was a place where you could experience 1,000 stories without having to buy 1,000 books. That is what Monsters.rent can do for your D&D campaign. You can rent and swap out as many quality miniature monsters and creatures for your D&D party as you could ever want, without having to buy them. You can rescue villagers from a kobold camp, or lead your party through the fighting forest, or many more adventures. We're coming out with new bundles all the time. Just sign up for our subscription to get access to your own personal library of minis. Go to monsters.rent to find out more. That's the website. Monsters, with an S, .rent. Get your library pass to a world of minis today.
we also wanted to let you know that today's episode is sponsored by Stardust and Dragons. I'm going to let one of the cast of Stardust and Dragons, Christian Hatcher, and his crew tell you a little bit more about it.
This August, a new adventure podcast is coming to a platform near you, filled with action.
You one of the two of them. We can't keep taking hits like that.
Drama.
Everything that she's been doing, everything she's going to do, finally sets in.
And Stardust.
Help! Help! Someone, please!
Find out more about this epic odyssey at stardustanddragons.com, where adventure awaits in the stars.
That's all the announcements we have today. Again, thank you so much for everything you do for us. You make this show possible. Like we said before, we'll be back next week with another great episode, and until then, let's go ahead and roll initiative.